Welcome back to Inspiration Contagion. This week, my guest is Justin Vajko. He is a marketing strategist and entrepreneur who launched his business in 2018 after working in both nonprofit and B2B marketing. In 2022, a chance connection with a Hollywood broker led him to create the Content Buddy system, helping busy B2B entrepreneurs make simple, trust building video shorts. Today, he teaches that system on podcasts and stages around the world with a mission to help 10,000 entrepreneurs confidently share their voice. With that, Justin, welcome.
Thank you so much, Holly. Good to be here.
Yeah, of course. Great to have you here. Obviously, we want to help more people share their message with the world. But I want to ask you, first of all, what makes Justin an inspirational leader, or what's your secret sauce with what you do in the world?
Yeah, I think when you sent me this earlier, I was like, I don't want to call myself an inspirational leader. It's a title I want other people to say of me, And so what I hope to bring to my team in order to make them inspired is a safe place, first of all. First and foremost, I remember watching this video years ago by Gary Vaynerchuk, and I never thought he would be this guy, but he was the one that taught me that he said in the video, his number one thing he does is to be a safe place for his team. And that struck me because I was like, first of all, I didn't know Gary V at that time. He was very kind of like, he wasn't, you wouldn't associate safe place with Gary V. He was very, there's a word for this, but standing, to stand out, he had to make a name for himself. And he was saying some things that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But the second thing was that he chose that over everything else. You would think be kind, or, what are some values I could think of at that time that would be more important. But it got me thinking. And then ever since then, it's proven to be true over and over that if you can be the safest place for your team, everything else good can happen, and your team can do their best work.
Yeah, it's interesting timing that you're answering that question this particular way. I just did a live stream this morning and we were talking about trauma in the workplace and how it doesn't have to be an extreme event, but that one of the pillars and solutions around that is creating a psychologically safe space for your culture and your employees, your clients, all the things, so that you can have a container for innovation, growth, exploration, and finding solutions. So I would agree with that. It's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, it's the
100%.
foundation. Because if you don't have that, you have blind spots. People don't tell you things. I mean, you can do the math real quick and figure out what happens if you don't have it.
Well, yeah, you can't have any real conversations without a safe, secure space to have conflict, have disagreements, have the hard conversations that are necessary for growth and innovation. So, Justin, with that, what does inspiration mean to you? And how have you discovered this in the work that you do with your clients?
Inspiration to me personally is the idea of being able to come up with ideas that are both fun, sustainable, worthwhile, money making for my business. So we're talking about in a business context, right? So that's what I immediately think of. And that means that for my team too. Often I have my team bring ideas to me that I go, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. I didn't think of it. Maybe you could define that as inspiration. I'm so glad you brought that to me. Let's do that. That's a better way than I would have done it. Or that's a better, something. So depending on who you're talking about, inspiration can mean different things. For my team, it's ideas I wouldn't have thought about, which come from being a safe place. For myself, it's ideas that really help my clients with their work or helps my business with what I'm doing in a way that's, again, fun and sustainable and moves the needle.
Yeah. I mean, those are important elements of the whole reason I think, well, maybe not the whole reason. A lot of people start their own business because the way of corporate America or the way the other outlets provided weren't supportive, sustainable, fun. They create a burnout, overwhelm, unhealthy, toxic environments. So if it's not fun, why are we doing it, right? Like, obviously it needs to bear fruit, but like it should also be a fun process because that's why people stick around, right? Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about peak performance. How do you define peak performance in particular in how you do your business and how you lead your team? And how did you arrive at that definition?
For us, peak performance is, first of all, making sure everybody feels good about their work. So that includes making sure we're honoring work-life balance. If you don't have work-life balance, things get out of tune. It's like a sprocket, or I'm not a technical guy. I'm not an engineer. So whatever gets out of sync in a wheel that makes it wobbly. So somebody can tell me, is it a ball bearing or a sprocket? Whatever. So if you don't have that work-life balance, you have an imbalanced wheel, you have a wobbly wheel. You can drive on a wobbly wheel. I did it. I remember driving to my mom and dad's house one time years ago, and I had snow frozen in one of the tires. And I went to every single place in town. It was very cold here in Wisconsin. And I was trying to get the snow out of my tire, and no car washes were open because it was so cold. And once it reaches certain, anyways, the point is, I drove to my mom and dad's 3 hours with a wobbly tire, and it sucked. And that's what burnout is. Like it's, I mean, it's even worse, I suppose. You know, if you take the analogy even further, tire falls off the car and your car breaks down. So peak performance is not having a wobbly wheel, and that's what work life balance buys us. So that's probably 80% of that. There's other things we look at, you know, and I'm always learning what that looks like having some defined job descriptions and making sure we're holding ourselves accountable to that. And especially this one, having ownership over your own job and over your role. But ownership also means making sure you're looking up for your next person in line. Military, they call that your battle buddy, but not that I'm a military person, but the first thing comes to mind. Like the person next to you, the person that you're handing this off to, are they set up for success? Do they need anything from you? So those are some ways we're trying to get the best performance as a group.
I love that. What I like was the tire metaphor. If we look at like your tire alignment, when your
Mhm.
tires are out of alignment, the steering wheel kind of pulls you off course, right? And so before even it breaks down or falls off the car, it's already taking you off course. And so when we're not balanced in our work and our
Mm.
professional life, we're usually going on the wrong path and there's more resistance, there's more drama, there's more toxicity. So yeah, I like that metaphor. I was like, ooh, I'm gonna take that a step
Totally use it.
further.
It's right up. That's right off the cuff there, but right off the dome from Justin. So feel free to use it.
Yeah. I was like wobbly wheel or tire alignment and like pulling you
There's
off
all sorts of
course.
great ways to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Justin, obviously, you've been in business for long enough that you've had some challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges or obstacles that you've
Mm.
faced along arriving at this place of more clarity around peak performance in your company and your culture?
I mean, the biggest challenge was me, myself, and I. I mean, as founders, we are our own bottlenecks in every way, shape, and form. And I did not have the benefit of decades in the corporate world to teach me the best practices about XYZ, to teach me best practices about bookkeeping or what a good P&L looks like or profit margins or even how to sell effectively without being salesy. Those are all lessons I had to learn the hard way. So, I mean, you can pick anything from my 7 years in business. I mean, I was in business before that on the side, but full time in business. And it could make a good story. I think for me, I'll pick just one. It was when I was in the fall of 22. I think I mentioned it in my bio. You read it. You know, I found a new opportunity to pivot the business to a new area. And I did not have the emotional capacity to pivot again. I'd pivoted probably half a dozen times up to that point, either different services or different sectors, and always trying to find my niche. What am I going to do for who, you know, at scale, things like that. And I was tired. I was tired. I'd done a lot with the previous niche. I was in recruitment marketing for a while. If anyone's familiar with that, it's just the process of marketing jobs versus marketing widgets that you sell to get people to sign up for those jobs and then apply and things like that. And it was burning me out. My coach was the one who really encouraged me. He kept pointing me back. He said, Justin, this is a really neat opportunity. You should probably consider this a little more than you are. And he gave me that accountability I needed to make that pivot, to have the courage to make that pivot one more time. I'm glad he did because that's the foundation of our business today. So someday I'll write him one big fat check for that when we're, I don't know, well, someday we'll see. That's what I think of as like that one moment was really pivotal for us, and I wouldn't have been able to do it if it weren't for my coach who knew me, and he, you know, we'd been working together for a while, and he knew what I needed to hear, and he encouraged me to do the hard thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good reminder there are constant pivots when you run a company, whether it's a technology, a platform, a way of delivery, a community, how you're speaking for things at top of the pipeline, marketing changes, sales changes, team changes, you name it. And so even though our goal is having more balance as leaders, especially as our own bosses, there are times where you have seasons where those pivots are emotionally draining and you don't really have the bandwidth for that. And that's where knowing where it's an aligned pivot versus a shiny object you could chase or something that could wait, right? And I think that's a really important thing that listeners should really ask themselves when you're doing the pivot. One, is it necessary? Two, is it aligned? And three, if you're emotionally burnt out, once you make this pivot, is it going to significantly improve your life so that you get back to balance? And then once
Mhm.
you answer those questions, hopefully it gives you more clarity, but also more energy on whether or not you should be even entertaining that pivot right now. Yeah.
I think it helps. I'll add this. Sometimes we can't answer our own questions effectively, especially if you're in a bad spot. Emotions will cloud judgment. It happens to me over and over and over again. If you're in an emotional discussion with your wife, or in my wife, we've learned, okay, we're having an emotional discussion. It's getting to be fight. We're both flooded, is what a therapist will call it. Your brain is flooded. We need to pause, come back, and that's one tip. But the other one is just having somebody who's an outside perspective is also helpful. So in our case, that would be a third party therapist, or in my case, like I shared, a coach who can give you objective, or at least semi-objective perspective, at least one more perspective than just trying to figure it out on your own. And I don't
Yeah.
recommend AI because judgment is not judgment. Just
It's not human either.
it's not human. It's not real world practical. It just wants to give you a good answer. So please don't use it as a source of good judgment. It's not a source of good judgment. It's a source of bad judgment, or
Thank
some
you.
kind of
Yeah.
judgment.
Yeah, yeah. I also think sometimes discussing with a coach, therapist, whoever that person is for you that gives you that objectivity, for some of us allows external processing, which
Yes.
it's interesting. Last night I was spending time with a good friend of mine talking about something that I have not spoken aloud with anyone yet. And I started crying and I was very confused as to why I was crying about something that didn't feel worthy of tears,
Yeah.
putting that in air quotes. And he was wise enough because he knows me well enough that he said, "Well, you haven't vocalized these thoughts that you've probably been thinking about for quite some time. And now that you have in a safe container, you feel comfortable enough to process emotionally what you." So, like, that's what we do in business. And a lot of our decisions are emotional, they are personal. It's hard to disconnect fully from the thing that is what you created. And so, having that third party voice is essential to your growth. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not just as a coach, but for all areas of life, like your good friend, somebody to process things with. And you could say that's a coach, you could say it's a therapist, but I'm a big fan of surrounding yourself with smart people who are also caring people who can listen, and you'll be more successful that way in life and in business.
Yeah, yeah. So we talked a little bit about this, but what are some of the other things that you've done within your company to create a culture of peak performance that lasts and that sticks?
So I mentioned ownership earlier, and it's just coming back to that. We do weekly team meetings, and then I do one-on-ones with the team as needed to get on the same page, and then go on deeper one-on-one where it's needed. And the ownership concept is interesting because I don't know where good ownership comes from. I don't know. I've only been in business so long. Maybe somebody smarter than me can tell me, but I suspect it comes from a mix, not just nature but nurture. Because I look back in my own life, and I remember contexts where I didn't want to have ownership, and those were contexts where my voice wasn't recognized. I didn't have a seat at the strategy table. Why would I put myself out there over and over? Why would I go have ownership if it's not going to be recognized, if it's not going to be shot down, if I'm going to get myself in trouble more likely than help myself out? So that's the nurture. But I also know as a human being, I have the desire to have more ownership over things in my life. Even with clients, it happens all the time. That's where scope creep comes in. Sometimes we've learned we productize our service, so it happens less now. But where you go, oh, but we could also help you with this. Like, you need this. I see it clearly. You don't see it. Let me help you. I can go wrong that way, of course, with scope creep. But with our team, I've been trying to encourage that ownership factor because it makes everything better when there's multiple eyeballs looking at everything, not in a like, are you doing it right sense, but is this good for all of us sense. And I don't know if I have a playbook for ownership. I just got here.
Ah,
But the point is, like, it's really good when you're there, because you don't have to worry as a business. I used to, in the beginning, when I was launching and I was bringing my team on, I was worried about every detail because I didn't know if my team had it. So I tried to trust the team, trust, and but also set expectations. Hey, I need you to look for opportunities and give them permission. If you see something, let me know. And then the safe place stuff comes in, and then ownership kind of grew, and it's there today.
yeah, I think this is important. So I'm going to hit on this a little bit before we get to revenue and wrapping our interview out here. But when it comes to ownership, I think how you interview for that and create that in your culture is making sure you have self-starters, people that take responsibility, who really value respect and loyalty, and who, when they are faced with a challenge or a problem, are very creative in solving it, and not just coming to you from like almost a victim mentality of like, I can't figure this out. Like, they come to you with a few options at the very least of Justin, like, I have this problem. I have a couple ideas. What do you think the best way forward is? And so there are things in the job description, questions you can ask through interviews, and then even 30-day, 60-day, 90-day when they're on the job, checkpoints to ensure that you've hired somebody who understands kind of at the core what ownership is. And I do think some of that is just inherently who they are. And it's really hard if you hire somebody who doesn't have that and they just want to be an employee. Like, there's a difference, especially when you're a small business owner. The people I've hired on my team take ownership and they are committed to the vision and the mission. They have value alignment. I don't have to worry about what they're doing. If they're going to drop a task, we all have oversight of what everybody's doing. So I know my marketing person is on top of that and like is thinking of creative ideas. But I also know collectively the team is dedicated and passionate about who we're serving.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so let's talk about money.
Mm.
Justin, when have you left some money on the table in your business and what did you do to fix it?
Well, right now, I'll tell you, it was hot off the press. So we have realized, at $1,000 per client per month average income, which is what it is, that's low ticket. That's a low ticket offer. And if the goal is $1 million, which it is, I'm a first generation entrepreneur. I'd like to hit $1 million revenue. It'd be kind of cool. We're at a quarter million right now. And again, it's not because there's any other goal. It's just like, I think that would be cool. That is just it. And I think that's perfectly okay to say. Yeah. So if that's our goal, that takes roughly 80 clients a month. And that's a lot of clients. Now, can we hit that? Yeah. The problem is in our capacity to handle that many clients. Short form video production from a monthly interview distributed to all platforms for visibility, right? Okay, very straightforward. The challenge with that, of course, is that it takes a longer time to get to $1 million. So will we get there? Yes, it'll take us 5 to 10 years on the current trajectory. Would I like to get there sooner? Yes, I would. I'd like to do other things with my life other than watch a business grow, little by little. For those listening, not watching, I'm looking at my wrist as if there's a watch there. And so we realized we could just add, what if we could find a service that was tangential or in addition to that was higher ticket? And so we're doing that right now and exploring that. And we had a couple beta tests last year that were successful. And so we're trying to now operationalize those. And what we're doing basically is we're taking basically visibility as a foundation. Okay, you're visible to your network. Great. You're visible in all these places. AI sees you in their search results and all these because you're posting to all the places instead of just one place. Great. Now let's get your authority at the next level and start being seen by new people on purpose, ideal clients. And so putting some ad spend behind that. So taking what we're doing now and just what can we add on to make it high ticket? That's what I'm doing right now.
Beautiful. Yeah, it takes a lot of people many years to realize that their core sweet spot offering is really just tangentially what you have like as your launch pad for the next thing. And once you create so much value there, which is why it's your sweet spot product or service, then you just kind of upsell into the next thing. So I'm glad you guys sorted that out and have tested it. Justin, this has been great. I'm going to ask you two really quick questions to wrap up. What's the best piece of advice you would share with others today?
Find a buddy. Find a buddy. I mean,
There you
that's
go.
we use the content buddy system in our agency to get people to do video, and people go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know video could be this easy." So obviously, I have a lot to gain by saying find a buddy, but also like we talked about earlier, a coach, friends who can listen for life and for business questions.
Love it. Accountability is key. Justin, what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
I wish that people would be able to be kinder to each other because I was a person in their life.
Beautiful. Kindness would be beautiful. Kindness is king, content is queen. Just kidding. It is what it is. Thank you so much, Justin. To
Yeah,
our listeners, be kind, spread the kindness. If something resonated with Justin's message, we'll have all of his links for his team, for his social, so you can check him out and learn more about what him and his team are up to, including that new VIP offering that they're providing. Thank you so much, Justin.
thank you, Holly.
All right.